All right, here's how you do lesson 2.03b, in which you are comparing two rationals or irrational numbers. Okay, there are many ways you can do this, but the way I'm going to do is using percentages. So I'm going to take any decimal and I'm going to make it to a percent. And whatever is not a decimal, I'm going to change it to a decimal first, and then I change it to a percent. So for example, here's problem number one. I change the numbers, so you can do this one on your own. But look how I do one that is similar. So look at the first number, 3.75. That's they gave me a decimal. Okay. I'm going to make that decimal into a percent. How? You're going to take the decimal, 3.75, and you're going to multiply by 100. And you can see I got 375%. Okay. Then I'm going to go to the other number, the one that says on the right, square root of 32 plus 4. That is not a decimal. So I'm going to type it in my calculator, square root of 32. Make sure the plus sign, you click it outside the radical, the square root symbol, plus 4. And you can see I got 9.65. But I'm going to take then that decimal, okay, that answer, and I'm going to multiply by 100. And you can see I got around 965%. It's a little bit bigger, but I'm just doing an estimate or around. And why I do that? Because it's much easier to compare the percentages than the decimals. And you can see that 375% is smaller. This symbol here means less than, or put it this way, smaller than. So 375% is smaller than 965%. Now, don't put the percentages in the box. Don't do that. You're going to write the original number. 375% is 3.75, and the 965% is square root of 32 plus 4. You're going to write the original numbers in the boxes. Okay, so whatever you write in these boxes are the original numbers. Okay, and that's how I do problem number one. Let's go problem number two. All right, so here's problem number two. Okay, and again, I'm going to use similar numbers. So you're comparing here 3.21 and 5 square root of 20. I'm going to use 3.12 and 4 square root of 17. Again, what I did in the first problem, I'm going to make whatever decimal into percentage. Whatever is not a decimal, I'm going to make it to a decimal and then to a percentage. And it's much easier to compare the percentages than the decimals. That's the way usually is explained, comparing decimals. But for me, it's much easier to compare percentages. So look what I'm going to do. The 3.12, I'm going to make it to a percentage. So 3.12, to make it to a percent, you just multiply by 100. And you can see I got 312%. Let me change the color. 312%. And then the 4 square root of 17. Okay. Let me write it here. 4 square root of 17. You see, I wrote it exactly as I read it in the calculator. I got 16.49, etc. But I'm going to go in my next line. I'm going to take my answer, click on the ANS key. It's going to bring your last answer. And you're going to multiply that by 100. And you can see I got 1,649%. Okay. Now, once I do that, I can look at the percentages and I can see 312% is smaller than 1,649%. But when you write in the box are not the percentages. You're going to write the original numbers. So in this case, I'm going to write the 3.12 is smaller. That's what that left arrow means, less than, smaller than 4 square root of 17. And that's how you do problem number two. Let's go number three. So here's question number three. Again, I'm going to do a similar one. And we are comparing rationals and irrational numbers. We're going to compare them. And the way I've been explaining is that I suggest you make the numbers that are not decimals, you make it into decimals, and then you change it into percentages, because it's much easier to compare percentages than decimals. Okay? So for example, I have here, again, I'm doing similar problem. Square root of 24 over 6. I'm going to take my calculator. I'm going to do square root of 24. Now make sure you click outside the square root symbol, divided by 6. And you can see I got this decimal. And then in my next line, I'm going to take my answer, press the ANS key, and you're going to multiply by 100. And you can see that I got 81.6%. So this is like around 81%. Okay. Then I'm going to do my fractions, 7 over 7. And 7 divided by 7, you can see I got 1. But that's not a person. Now I'm going to take my answer, 1. And I'm going to multiply by 100 to get into percentage. And you can see that's 100%. And you can see that 81% is smaller than 100%. So it means that square root of 24 over 6 is smaller, less than 7 over 7. Okay? In the boxes, you write the original numbers, not the percentages, not the decimals. Let's go to the next problem. All right, here's question number 4. And again, I'm going to do similar exercises. We're comparing these numbers, rationals and irrational numbers. But the way you're going to compare them is whatever number that is not a decimal, you're going to convert it to a decimal. And then you're going to convert it to a percent. And the reason I'm doing that again is because it's much easier to compare the percentages than the decimals. So take your calculator. And I'm going to do the first one here, square root of 59. Again, make sure the minus sign, you write it outside the square root, minus 4. You can see what answer I got as a decimal. Now I'm going to make that decimal into a percent. I'm going to press the blue key so I get to a new line in the calculator. Click the ANS, okay? And now take that, that brings the previous answer you had above. And you're going to multiply that by 100. And you can see I got 300, around 368%. So this is around 368%. Now I'm going to take my fraction. So I'm going to click on new line in my calculator. And I'm going to do 2 divided by 13. And you can see I got this long decimal. I'm going to go to a new line in the calculator. I'm going to call or recall the previous answer that I got, the 0.15, blah, blah, blah. And you're going to make that decimal to a percent by multiplying by 100. And you can see you got 15, around 15%. Now that you have it as percentages, it's much easier to compare the percentages than the decimal. Okay? And you can see here that 368 is not smaller than 15%. 15% is smaller than 368. And the 15% basically means that the fraction 2 over 13 is smaller than square root of 59 minus 4. So again, look how I compare the two numbers using percentages. But when you write your answers in the boxes, you write the original numbers, not the percentages. Okay? And that's how you do problem number 4. Let's go to the next one. All right, and problem number, I think it's problem number 5. Okay, what we're going to do now, they gave us a list of numbers, rational numbers, the fractions, the decimal have an end, mixed numbers, and the rational numbers, the square roots ones, okay? And they want you to put them in order from smallest to greatest. That's least to greatest mean your first numbers are the smallest numbers, and the numbers to the right are the biggest numbers, okay? How are you going to do that? Like I did the first 4 problems. I'm going to take all of these numbers here, and whatever's not a decimal, I'm going to make it to a decimal, and then I'm going to change it to a percent. Okay, so for example, I'm going to use all of these numbers here. They're similar to what you have in problem number 5. I'm going to start with square root of 15. Square root of 15, look what I got. That decimal in my new line, I'm going to click the ANS, and I'm going to multiply by 100. And what I did is I took the decimal answer, square root of 15, and I converted to a percent. So this is around, I don't know, around 387%. Okay, that's the first one. Then, let me clear this. Now I'm going to do the fraction, 25 divided by 8. Okay, And what I'm going to do with that, I'm going to take that answer, that decimal, and I'm going to multiply by 100. Okay? And you can see that I got 312.5. So let's say this is around 312%. The next number is 3.75. I don't need to do any change I don't need to convert it to a decimal because it's already a decimal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that decimal and multiply by 100. And you can see that as a percent, it will be 375%. Then I'm going to take the mixed number now, the 4 and 4/5. Now, when you type mixed numbers in the calculator, you're going to type it like this. 4, that's the big 4 here, plus 4/5, the fraction 4/5. That's what a mixed number is. It's a whole number and a fraction. And when you did that, when the calculator, you can see I got 4.8. Now I'm going to take the answer, 4.8, and I'm going to multiply by 100. So I get a percentage. So that will be 480%. Okay. And now I'm going to the last one. You can see I'm changing every number here into a percent. Why? It's much easier to compare percentages than the decimals. So now I'm going to do 7 subtract square root of 6. You can see what number I got there. And I'm going to take my answer, that decimal, click the A and S. So it calls back that answer and multiply by 100. So I change it to a percent. And this is around 455%. Once you have all the percentages, oops, my bad for that. I didn't want to do that. Okay. Once you change every number to a percent, it's going to be much easier to put them in order. Which of these which of these percentages is the smallest? The first one that's smaller is this one, 312%. But when you write your answer, you're not going to put the percentages. You're going to write the original numbers. 312% came from the fraction 25/8. So that will be my first number, the smallest number from the list. I'm going to cross this out so I don't use them again. Then I'm going to look at the percentages again. I'm going to look for the next smallest, and that will be 375%. But again, I'm not going to write 375%. I'm going to write the original number, so 3.75. And then I'm going to cross them out so I don't use them again. The next percentage that is bigger, we're going from smaller to bigger. The next one is 387%, but I'm not going to write that percentage. I'm going to write the original number, so square root of 15. And I cross it out so I don't use it again. The next one is 455%. But again, I'm going to write the original number, so 7 minus square root of 6. And finally, let me cross this out. I put the last number I have left, 480%. But again, you're not going to write 480%. You're going to write 4 and 4/5. Whatever answers you put in the box have to be the original numbers. Okay? And that's how you do problem number 5. Let's go to the last one. Like I did in the last problem, question number 6, I'm going to change all of these numbers into decimals, then into percents. Again, why? It's much easier to compare the percentages than the decimals. Using your calculator, that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to call my calculator. Ooh, that came out too big. Let me make it smaller. There it is. Let me erase all of these numbers I had before. And again, I'm doing similar problems, okay? And like in number 6, so you can try this on your own. So let's start with the first one, 2 square root of 6. I got that long decimal. Hit the blue button so you get a new line. Call the answer you got last, click the A and S key, and you're gonna multiply that number, that decimal, by 100 to make it to a percent. So we're talking about here around 489%. This is an estimate, okay? I don't need to write the whole thing. I'm estimating. I'm rounding. Okay. Now I'm going to do the mixed number. Remember what I said before, the previous problem. How do you write mixed numbers in the calculator? You're going to write 5 plus, and then you're going to put the fraction 1/8. A mixed number is really a whole number plus a fraction. Look what I got, 5.125. I'm going to go to a new line in my calculator. I'm going to take my answer, 5.125, and I'm going to multiply by 100. I want to make it to a percent. So this is around 512%. Let's go to the next number. So square root of 14. Now when I type the plus 4, make sure you type it outside the plus, outside the square root. Plus 4, you can see I got 7 point in a long decimal. Hit the blue key so you get a new line. Call your last answer pressing the A and S. Okay, and multiply by 100 so you make the decimal to percent. And you can see this is 774%, around 774%. Now I'm gonna go take my next number. My next number is already a decimal, so 7.56. And what I'm gonna do is just multiply by 100 so I get a percentage. And you can see this is 756%. Okay, and finally I have the fraction at the end, so 33 divided by 4, and I'm gonna take my answer, that decimal, and I'm gonna multiply by 100. Okay, and I get 125%. So now that I have all of these numbers as percentages, it's going to be much easier to put them in order. Now, careful, number 6, they want you to put the numbers from the greatest to the least. The biggest numbers first, the smallest number last. Okay? And look what else they said. They want you to enclose your answer. I think I forgot to do that in the previous problem. Yeah. In the previous problem, I forgot that when you write your answer, make sure you put the braces. Okay? So let me show you how I do that in number 6. So make sure that your answer, you put it in between the braces. So you're going to put the braces. So you're going to put these braces like this. And what you're going to do now is which of these percentages is the biggest? This one is the biggest, 825%. But you're not going to put the percentage. You're going to put the fraction. So I'm going to put 33 over 4. And I'm going to cross it out so I don't use it again. Who's the next percentage that is, see, I started with the greatest, now the second greatest. That will be 774%, which is the number square root of 14 plus 4. That's the second biggest. I cross it out so I don't use it again. What's the next one? The third biggest, okay? Or the third smallest, that's another way of saying it, is 756%. But as a decimal, the original number was a decimal, 7.56. That's what goes next. Cross it out. And then the next percentage that is smaller, okay, or the greatest, because I'm going from biggest to smallest. So it's going to be the next biggest, all right? That will be 512%, which is the same thing as 5 1/8. And finally, let me cross this out. I have left the 489%, but again, you're writing the original number. So I'm going to write 2 and square root of 6. And then at the end, you close it with the braces. Okay? That's what the instruction says here. Enclose your answer between the braces. Okay? And that's how you do this homework. All right? I hope this helps.